So I do think like being from a family with two cultures and learning slowly to appreciate the one that I wasn't immersed in helped me understand this character.
From NCPR, welcome to Northwards. People, ideas, and conversations from and about Northern New York, Vermont, and beyond. I'm Mitch Teich.
Support for the Northwards podcast comes from the J.C. Steinecker and M.E. McDonald Charitable Fund at Adirondack Community Foundation in support of the Adirondack Community Foundation, building stronger Adirondack communities.
Dogstagram, if you will, is still kind of, there are like dog influencer owners out there who use their Instagram feed to like highlight products, but like it's really easy to kind of ignore that. And, the dogs aren't making political statements. The dogs are, like the most politicized you see a dog on like a dog social media feed is they might wear some attire supporting a sports team.
Right. Or maybe like a rainbow flag bandana or something.
But at its heart, it's still cute.
Yeah, and it's all pretty benign.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which is what Instagram and social media used to be. It just was like, hey, here's the cool thing that your friend is doing, and now it's a tool of oppression. Isn't that fun?
That's great. Ethan.
Ethan Shanty, producer of Northwards.
Yes, who joins us when?
Before conversations begin on the podcast.
Anyway, both of us have been really busy the last couple weeks.
The last couple months, it's been an extraordinarily busy summer. I told myself I was going to schedule in some rest time. And that's how I know that I'm an adult, because I have to pencil in physically on a calendar, take today off.
Breathe. Yeah, you are like the living embodiment of waiting to exhale.
Not the first time I've heard that either.
You were actually on the road for a little while, though, this summer. At least you took a trip down to, it was Virginia?
Yeah,
right?
I drove down to Virginia. It was how can I say this in a neutral way?
Epic?
It was epic's not, it was an eventful trip. I spent a lot more money on car repairs than I would like to spend on a road trip.
At the same time, and you are somebody who, when they're not at the radio station, is often making road trips as a working musician.
Yeah.
I always like hearing about like your sleeping arrangements, because they seem like they're different than a lot of people's sleeping arrangements when they go on road trips.
Well, okay, now that I've become like an adult and I have money, it's a lot less grimy than it was even like 10 years ago. Thankfully, the singer of our band travels for work, and so he has racked up like literally millions of hotel points.
That is the one that should be like, like if you're a band and you're putting a Craigslist ad up for a member, like one of the requirements should be must have.
You're a Hilton Diamond member.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but even still, now that we get hotel rooms with actual beds and working showers, sometimes still like there's 12 of us crammed into a room, and so like 3 people are sharing a bed, and then other people are finding out like how little space they can take up on the floor so they're not touching other people.
There's a scene in Spinal Tap like just along those lines. How are we supposed to get 7 people into a king leisure bed?
That's what
Don't
it's like.
tempt me, sir. So would you say this is a cautionary tale for young musicians, or this is just like the reality of life as a young musician, and it is neither cautionary nor non-cautionary?
I don't want to be one of those like gatekeepers that says like, oh, you got to pay your dues. But the reality, without judgment, the reality of playing in like a DIY punk band is that you're not getting paid very much, and you are taking a lot of time off of work. And if you're like a young musician, you probably don't have a salaried position. So you're going to be sacrificing money in order to go play on the road. So you're probably going to sleep on a lot of floors, and you're going to sleep on cars in cars, and those places that people offer to house you in aren't always the cleanest or nicest. And
did you sleep in a bowling alley at one point, or you played in a bowling alley?
I played and slept in a bowling alley. It was one of the finest experiences of my entire life. You wouldn't think that the basement of a bowling alley would be super comfortable, but it was amazing. Like, I didn't care at all that no one came to this show. Like, literally 2 people paid to get into the show. And for me, it was just like, whatever, free practice, because the bowling alley was offering us a place to stay, and they had clean showers in their basement, which is also
Why
insane.
does a bowling alley have clean showers? Why does a bowling alley have any showers?
Well,
in the
so
basement?
the bowling alley's thing is that they were not only a bowling and gaming center, they had like a huge arcade there as well, but they also had a record store attached to it and a live music venue. They actually had 2 stages, one upstairs and one downstairs. The downstairs basement is where we stayed. And so they were run by some old punks who wanted to make it as clean and comfortable for traveling bands as possible. So they had showers. They had a washer and dryer that actually worked.
Wow.
They offered us free beer and free pizza. And
Did you have to wear their shoes when you played?
I should have asked. We did bowl. We did bowl for free, and that was a lot of fun. But mostly I was interested in the Star Wars pinball. I've taken a lot of trips. I've done a lot of stupid stuff. I've gotten lost on the road. I've been burned by my own car's cigarette lighter on the road because my friend Dylan, God bless him, I love him so much. But we were traveling to, I can't remember if we were going to play a show or see a concert, but it was a 98 Chevy Cavalier. So one of the last car models that had a cigarette lighter built in. I didn't even smoke, but it was there. And so my friend,
and it was probably before there was any, you wouldn't have, at that point, you wouldn't have then taken the cigarette lighter out and plugged in a USB hub.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
They didn't exist.
I didn't have that. Yeah. Right. So, we're driving like 75 miles an hour on 81, and my friend Dylan presses the cigarette lighter in, and then it pops out, and he pulls it out and sticks it to my arm, and I swerve the car because I'm so shocked. And I was like, Dylan, what the hell is wrong with you? And he said, I didn't know if it would be hot or not. I was like, what do you mean? That's what it's for. It's supposed to get hot, and you can see the red hot coil. What are you thinking?
I think there is an Allman Brothers song about that.
Red Hot Coil by the Allman Brothers Band. And then he proceeded to open up my glove box and start throwing things out the window, because that's what you do when you're a teenager. How about you? Any exciting road trips where you got burned by a cigarette lighter?
Not along those lines. No. I did once when I was, it was my first radio job, and I worked at this tiny. I worked in this tiny town of 8,000 people. It's so different.
Right.
I was the news director of this little station in a little town in Iowa, and as you might imagine, it was not an especially well-paying job.
Sure.
However, at the time, I guess it is still remote, but it was remote enough, and the internet wasn't really a thing enough that there were some daily newspapers in other parts of Iowa that occasionally needed to cover this region.
Okay.
And they hired me. So I was the news director of this little station. This is all going somewhere, I promise.
I believe you.
I was the news director of this little radio station, and I was a stringer for 2 different daily newspapers. And
so you're making decent money, I guess. Yeah,
I mean, they paid me per article. I might have even been per word or per column inch, probably. And column inches, for those of you who don't read physical newspapers anymore, are literally how long the article appears in print.
Uh-huh.
And then there was a TV station in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which was a good 2.5-hour drive away. But again, small town, they actually covered stuff that happened there. But it was a big pain for them to actually send a reporter up. So they sent me a camera and a tripod.
Great.
And so, and they paid me per story. And in fact, if there were breaking news, normally if it was just some kind of press conference or they needed me to shoot B-roll or whatever, I would literally take the tape that I shot, drive to the bus station, put the tape in an envelope, give it to the bus driver on, Iowa trailways or whatever.
Really?
And they would drive, along with passengers. It was like freight. And 3 hours later or 4 hours later, the tape would arrive in Cedar Rapids, and they would send somebody from the TV station to pick it up at the bus station and put it on their air. However, if there were breaking news, like some kind of fire or the governor visited or something like that.
Or the governor's on fire.
Exactly. Also a good band name. They would send their helicopter up to the
no
local
kidding.
airport to pick up the tape.
Whoa.
Like why they wouldn't send their helicopter with a reporter on it to do a story is another.
Well, then you
another
got to pay the
question.
reporter.
That's a
too.
good point. That is
Yeah.
an excellent point. They were not paying me a lot. It was like $50 a story or
Yeah.
something. Anyway, so all this goes back to the point that I saved up a whole lot of freelance money over the course of about a year, and I used it. Some would say I blew it, but I used it to go to New Zealand for 10 days.
Whoa.
It was 1993. And,
So it was
you know,
before the Lord of the Rings movies, so
Yeah,
New Zealand
true.
wasn't settled.
It was right, exactly. Right. One would say like things were cheaper then too.
Right, yeah.
And also one of my relatives kicked in some frequent flyer miles to make the
helps.
flight itself easier. But anyway, it was also 1993, so there was no internet like I'm going to book an Airbnb in this place. And
Right.
So I got there and I'd made reservations at a hotel like for the first night I was there. Like I flew from Waterloo, Iowa to Chicago, Chicago to San Francisco or Los Angeles, and then from California to Auckland, and then from Auckland to Christchurch. So it was a good 23 hours of travel.
God.
I was young.
Brutal.
It was like, this is
Brutal.
exciting. And I
Can't
got
wait
there.
to not sleep for 3 days.
Right, exactly. Right, and imagine what the time change was.
Yeah, that must have been brutal.
I'm still actually getting over it. But yeah, so I had a hotel room the first night I was in Christchurch, New Zealand. And then my plan was to travel all up and down the South Island and make my way to the North Island where I would fly home from Auckland. But like I literally, like anytime I would get someplace, there would be a little like kiosk, like an information kiosk with a very friendly New Zealander staffing it who would find a place and say, how much can you spend? And they would like book a place, and some of them were like rooms in people's houses that I had never met, and some of them were, motels, and so it was actually like it was a really cool experience. And it's like I took buses between towns, and I took trains, and there was one point where I took like a short flight, and it was like very. I don't really watch The Amazing Race, but but the few episodes I've seen, it's like I'm running to the airport because like. The one flight that goes from point A to point B leaves in 45 minutes, and you can walk up there and have one bag and buy and buy a ticket. And the only thing I have left from that trip, aside from my wonderful memories, is a cricket bat I bought at some point along the way, which of course was too large to fit in anything like really useful, so it was sticking out of my backpack the entire trip.
So people were afraid of you. They're like, this guy means business.
I don't know. They were like, why is that dude carrying a cricket bat?
So even though like our experiences in our 20s were vastly different, we still experienced like some of that like come what may kind of energy. You were just like going with the flow, much like anytime we went to go play a show, we had no idea where we were going to sleep that night. Yeah.
Yep.
That's the only way to do it.
I did see you too on that trip also.
How was the Edge in person?
He was somewhat smaller than you see him on a screen because he was like over there.
A lot of right angles on that guy.
Yeah, right, exactly. Anyway, we're talking about road trips because, of course, we've both been busy.
Yes.
Some of the time on the road, some of the time just being busy. And so we're listening back this episode to an interview we did some months ago about a road trip. It's a fictional road trip, but really well captured and well described by an upstate New York author, Soma Mei-Shang Frazier. The book is called Off the Books, and let's listen back to that now. What were the themes that you wanted to explore as you sat down to work on this novel?
Well, I had heard about some medical tourism in China here. If you need a kidney or a lung, it takes maybe 4-6 years. China, bam, 1 day, 1 week. So people started to wonder you'd have to have quite a source of organs to procure one so quickly and with the right blood type and everything. And so I had read about political prisoners and prisoners of conscience being incarcerated and then having organs harvested. So there were some grim themes, thoughts about like systems that fail us, the targeting of ethnic minorities, those types of things. And then there were some, lighter themes like romance and road trips and family and those types of things.
Yeah, from that rather dark spark, which I guess is a contradiction in terms, it actually yielded a novel that is at turns both serious and dark, but also light and humorous and romantic.
Yeah, I feel like when you have like a wake and bake weed smoking grandpa character and then a hot guy that may or may not in my mind have looked just like Henry Golding, there's got to be some fun in there too.
Well, so you mentioned the wake and bake grandfather character. He's the grandfather to Mei.
Yes.
Can you give us a little window into what shapes her? There's so much behind her character.
Yeah, she is Chinese American, born and raised in Oakland, California. And her grandpa, he's got a lot of swag and he likes to teach her, American history, about the Chinese working on the railroads, those types of things. And so Mei, living in Oakland, sees a bit of his culture, sees some systemic injustice, and so that kind of prepares her for seeing larger political issues and understanding them once they crop up.
Well, and she is, I guess there's no other way to put it, an Ivy League dropout, who it sounds like her experience, I mean, she had some other things going on that led her to drop out, but also the experience she had when she got there was a whole bunch of contradictions.
Yeah, she went to a school that was founded, for the education of the quote-unquote savages, Native Americans, and she feels like her classmates still are sort of savage. And so she has a family tragedy occur and decides school's no longer for her and starts driving folks around instead.
Do you see this? I mean, she's in her early 20s, so like chronologically, she's beyond childhood, but in a lot of ways, this feels like a coming-of-age novel.
Yeah, I think that childhood has moved, I guess those who make tax laws agree. But yeah, so she does grow up during this story, and I think it often takes like leaving your home and going somewhere else to start that in motion, and she really starts growing up the more she sees of the world.
Well, and she sees a lot of the world because it's also a road trip novel that leads us from the West all the way to upstate New York. How did your own move from San Francisco to central New York, Syracuse, Oswego, inform that aspect of this novel?
That is a great question. Actually, every stop that they make on the way is one that I made with my kiddo when we moved. My kid's my road dog, and so we decided rather than fly, we would just drive across. And so we saw little towns that the internet had not reached and giant cities, and so they're in the book.
Are you someone who enjoys the open road, the great American road trip, if you will?
Yes. Although I didn't set out to write a road trip novel, I love my car. I think it's probably the most American thing about me is how much I love that car. Because you're insulated, and yet you're also free. You can move around the country at will.
Well, and Mei is this off-the-books driver, but one of the things that she does for her clients, or at least for Henry, is to put together these little information sheets about every place they stay. And it felt to me like how my parents, or really my dad, would prepare my brother and me every day when we'd be on a road trip. I guess was the information sheet, knowing that you took this road trip with your son, something, if not literally taken from that? You wrote information sheets.
Yeah, I wrote down a couple notes, Now, see, if my son ever listens to this, he'll be like, what? I thought you were just like saying this off the top of your head. But no, not off top.
You didn't know that much about Elko, Nevada before you, or
No,
Nevada, my bad.
I did not. I did not. I didn't know like the snow fences in Wyoming. I didn't know what they were and how they catch the snow.
Really interesting, though. And so that's probably a good segue, because parenting and family really underscore a huge part of this novel. We won't give away too much, but can you share what we find out relatively early is the true nature of what Henry, the person that May is driving around, what's he doing on this trip?
He is trying to help out a vulnerable child because the family can't in this situation. He's helping out, and that really resonates with May because she's trying to figure out her own family, and she even thinks about parenting for the first time, being exposed to Henry and his secret mission.
Well, and you know, at the heart of the secret mission is not just this vulnerable child, but what we learn about the circumstances that she's from, and the father that they're looking for are going through, the very real situation facing the Uyghur people in China. It can't have been easy to take that very real situation and weave it into a novel that's probably being read by a lot of people who know next to nothing about that oppression.
Yeah, that's actually why I wanted to write the novel, because China, you know, being our number one trade partner and a rising global superpower, we don't talk about this. We don't hear about it. Also, they're great with propaganda and keeping things quiet. And so I have now been warned. Like I talked to some folks from Radio Free Asia, and they said, "Do you plan to go to China anytime soon?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Good, don't." Yeah, so I think that I was doing a lot of research during the day that made me want to curl into fetal position on the floor and just stay there. And then at night I would think about the pleasant things in the novel. And so it was a very up and down process of writing.
There is some education. I mean, there must have been. I wonder if there was there an editor whispering in your ear that we need to understand this better? Because we'll mention it. The Uyghurs are a Muslim minority within China who are sort of systematically being eliminated or re-educated, or I think at one point somebody refers to this as Genocide 101. Yeah,
our government declared it a genocide, and yet, we might have changed a little bit of how we interacted with the Beijing Olympics, but we still went.
Right, there was a diplomatic boycott, but not an athletic boycott.
Exactly. Yeah, we didn't hit him in the wallet where things hurt. So I didn't have an editor whispering in my ear about that, because I too was sort of learning about the situation as I researched it and wrote. And I actually I wanted to speak with a Uyghur novelist named Perat Tursun. But he had been disappeared by the government. So I did a lot of research on my own and learned with the characters in the book.
Well, and one of the characters is a professor and a writer who is coming to terms with just how exposed he is by being outspoken on this issue. Do you feel like that now? I mean, you mentioned the interview with the Radio Free Asia and the caution not to go to China anytime soon, but sitting in northern New York, is there a feeling of exposure that you feel now, or that you did as you were writing?
Absolutely. Exposure / fear. The Chinese government is very formidable, and they have, folks have been threatened, and when I did the interview with Adil of Radio Free Asia, she was the only one of her Uyghur reporter colleagues who hadn't had someone back in Xinjiang disappeared by the government from the family. And the only reason, perhaps, that is true of her is that her mom happened to be visiting her in Washington, D.C. When things started really popping off in China. and she just stayed. So now she lives with her mom. Her dad's still back in China, and we'll see.
I think the other thing that stays with us throughout the course of this book, and we touched on it already, is parenthood, but more broadly, the things that parents do for the sake of their children, but also for the sake of themselves. How did your own parenthood shape and underscore those kinds of themes in this book?
I never thought that I would be a helicopter parent. Never really thought I'd be a parent at all. I was like, dogs are cuter. They've got fur. But once I had my kid, I realized I would go to great lengths to protect this tiny human being. And so some of the things in the story that seem, maybe more surreal and seem to be things that one couldn't fathom doing, I think the parents maybe can fathom doing. And those are things that I actually drew from news stories, et cetera. So, yeah, just being a parent taught me how much you're willing to put on the line for your kid, and also like the compromises that you might have to make as someone who's, an individual, a spouse, or partner, and a parent.
Well, and it seems that's like the biggest area of growth for Mei, is going from someone whose real attitude towards this is as a child to appreciating, as she comes into the orbit of this very vulnerable girl, appreciating what her own parents and her own forebears have done for her, but also for themselves.
Yeah, I bit that straight from my life. I was walking across a playground, and there was this little kid. I think her name was Jadeja, started with a J, and she was playing tetherball, and the ball had gotten stuck up at the top. And I was 34 at the time, still not really thinking about having kids. And she said, "Can you help me get that?" So I was like, "Sure." And I put my arms around her to lift her up so she could knock the ball free. And all of a sudden I felt like, oh, I need to take care of a child. So I experienced that awakening, and then thought, I can write this in.
Wow, how amazing that you can actually, that there's like this bolt of lightning moment for you.
Yeah, I'm lucky because for me, there was no middle ground of uncertainty. Do I want to have a kid or not? I was like, heck no, absolutely yes.
Talk about Mei's grandfather.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of ways, I don't think you can read this book without him coming off as your favorite character. He's so likable and no nonsense, and or at least we think he's no nonsense.
Yes. So, as mentioned, he's a wake and bake weed smoker. He plays a lot of video games. He was a mechanic, but he is, like many of my Chinese family members, rather blunt. He calls Mei an Oriental cracker mix because she's, Caucasian and Asian descent. And I pulled a lot of his swag as well from, my own grandma, who was, she was mischievous. She was a poker shark. She defended her home against invaders with a gun while my ex-military hero grandfather hid in the bedroom. And she also was someone that, like the grandpa, it's very hard to dislike.
If I'm not mistaken, you have a biracial past as well, correct?
Yes, yeah.
So that must have, that must shape a lot of how Mei's background plays out.
Absolutely. I think, it's easier to connect on certain levels with the parent who has, if you have a parent who's grown up in the culture that you're living in, there are certain ways of communicating that cultural contexts that make it easier, and it can be harder to see, how another culture expresses love and all those things. So you may think like, my mom just doesn't care about me. She just keeps providing me with food and money and never, says those sweet things to me that my friends' parents say. So I do think like being from a family with two cultures and learning slowly to appreciate the one that I wasn't immersed in helped me understand this character.
Now, you teach at SUNY Oswego, right?
Yes.
So I guess the question that popped into my head as I was thinking about May and her college experience, and some of the professor, the one, I guess he was a high school teacher, right? The journalism advisor. How do you view, especially having completed this novel and thought through all the various things that go into May? How do you view the college students, the real life flesh and bone college students who are now in your orbit?
I love them. I probably shouldn't say that. HR might not take that right, but they come in ready to learn, and I feel like if more of us did that on an everyday basis, just show up ready to learn, the world would be a better place. And although May drops out and has had like some experiences with teachers who are helpful, teachers who are not so helpful, I just hope to be one of those helpful teachers to my students. And I think that publishing the book is useful because I'm able to, like, I could bring in all the rejection letters from publishers who passed on the book and show them how it mirrors the workshopping process, that kind of thing, because they would always like a kiss, kick, kiss. They'd say like, this author, writes gorgeous prose, but the reason that they passed on it, and then some other nice thing, and so I could share that with my students. So I feel like the book has helped me.
And it's also interesting to think about where all of them must fall on their own coming of age continuum as they come into your classroom.
Yes. Nothing makes me feel older than seeing these brilliant young people. It's interesting to have a kid who's 14 and then be interacting with students who are primarily like 18 to 23, 24, mostly 18 to 22, and to see that they come in at very different levels of preparation too. Some of them have had a high school experience, which is discouraging. And then others have had these wonderfully like joyous preparation for college type high school experiences. And some of them come in with a lot of real life, experience. Some of them can make it to one class but not another because they're working or caring for a family member, while others are sort of what you picture when you look at like Hollywood's vision of the American teen.
All right, so I can't let the opportunity go by without referencing the thing that popped off the page, and I said, I can't believe that I'm not the only one that thought this. At some point in my own childhood and for many years thereafter, I really did think that the lyrics of Secret Agent Man were Secret Asian Man.
Yes. That is, yep, absolutely. I heard that song and I was like, it's pretty cool to be Asian. Can be the Secret Asian Man, but I was so disappointed when it's just any old agent.
Well, and as you get older, you can think of it as Secret Aging Man.
Yes. Yes, we all become that eventually.
Well, listen, it's a terrific novel. I really enjoyed my time with it.
Thank you so much for having me in, and I hope people enjoy the ride with May and Henry.
Soma Mei-Shang Frazier is the author of the novel Off the Books, which is recently out in paperback. Our interview first aired or dropped as a podcast, some might say, some months ago when the book was out in hardcover. Ethan Shanty is with us, and we were talking about road trips a little bit earlier. Do you have any road trips planned?
Yes, my next road trip is going to be next summer. I'm sure that I'll find some way to fill my time between now and then, but my next road trip, the only thing that I have tentatively planned is to drive to Maine. I want to go there because I'm a Stephen King obsessive. My girlfriend wants to go there because she wants to go to Acadia National Park and see the sunrise, which I think would probably also be pretty beautiful. That's my next road trip. I think, what's Maine, like 7-8 hour drive, 9 hour drive?
Depends on how you go, but we went that was a road trip we did this past summer.
Right.
And like to get to the coast, you need, 6 or 7 like comfortably 8.
Yeah, okay. Good to know. And your next road trip?
My next road trip is actually, at this point, looks like it's going to be Boston in October, where we are tentatively scheduled to go watch our daughter row in the head of the Charles Regatta.
We got rivers here. She could row here.
She does row here.
Okay, we'll just do that then.
But her team is not rowing here, so...
They could. Did she try? Did she invite them?
Actually, like somebody she rode with over the summer, I believe will also be there, representing, what is it? Clarkson. That's the school thing.
I've heard of Clarkson. Yeah. What do they do?
They row. That's all I know. Anyway, that's all for this episode of Northwards, and Ethan Shanty is back with us in the studio. Actually, he's never left the studio, so he's going to tell us who produces this show and makes all of this great stuff happen.
Northwards is an NCPR podcast production. The show is written, produced, and edited by Mitch Tyke with digital production supervision by me. I'm Ethan Shanty. Doyle Dean is our production manager. Bill Hanel is our director of digital services, and Caitlin Kelly handles our social media. To hear more conversations and to support this show, visit ncpr.org/northwards. This is NCPR, North Country Public Radio.
Is it though?